and yeah, teaches improv classes to people here in Totnes in Devon, and has been a great source of sanity, play and inspiration to me in that time. So
oh, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. So
Thank you.
welcome.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here, and I haven't got a clue what we're going to talk about.
Nope.
Yeah.
But there's lots of fertile ground, eh?
Yes.
There's lots of subjects.
Lots of dangerous ground.
Dangerous ground that has been surfacing recently that we're both engaged with. So maybe that would be a good place to start, to just tell everyone what new input has been coming in recently and what effect that's had on you.
Right, so what I did was I've been getting a lot of links sent to me by a YouTube ninja, looking at some of these long form conversations, which included people like Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, the Rubin Report and things like that. So I've been looking at those, and I've just been feasting on this new way of people talking, which is unedited, because you get such a one-sided view of things on BBC News or in documentaries, BBC documentaries, which are funded, of course, to create certain impacts. Yeah, so these long-form conversations open up the possibility for people just to talk for sometimes 3 hours on end and cover everything as far as possible. And if that's not enough, then you book in another 3 hours and talk again. I really find this so exciting.
Yeah.
And of course, being introduced to Jordan Peterson has revolutionised my way of thinking about men. And it's just prompted me to go down the rabbit hole of the YouTube thing and pick up on other things that are happening. For example, Tommy Robinson. Oh, we're not supposed to mention that name. But I did happen to watch his talk at the Oxford Union in 2015. And because I'm into acting and because I've done that all my life, so I'm quite used to sort of analysing things via body language rather than academic analytical debates. I watch body language. And I was just deeply moved by this guy. Yeah, he did turn up in a suit, looking a little bit like something out of Peaky Blinders at a wedding. But I'm street. I've done a lot. I've lived in cities. I'm streetwise. You know, so I know how to share things with people who are street, working class.
Yeah.
And I love their company. So I'm looking at this guy and I'm watching him talking about what's happened, what was happening in Luton, and how Luton has changed since he was a boy.
Yeah.
And instead of one Muslim mosque, there are now 30 there. And he was basically I think more than anything else, talking about the way that police weren't reacting in a just and fair way to the prevalence of Muslim gang rapes in Luton. And he was very, very concerned about the growth of this tendency and expressed a sort of an unfairness about the way he was being arrested for talking about it and being put into jail for talking about it because he's supposed to be racist or right-wing. And other people, the actual people who committed the crimes, weren't being arrested for it. And this struck me, I was introduced to this subject for the first time.
That was also my first introduction to him. Because I totally believed the media misrepresentation of him.
But before you saw
I saw that Oxford Union address.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, if I'm going to check this guy out, because it felt like a brave thing to do.
Yeah.
If I'm going to check this guy out, then I'm going to do it in a setting that's the most academic, if you like, most respectful that it could possibly be.
Yeah.
And so I listened to that speech, and the thing that struck me about it the most was that he kept coming back to this question: what would you do?
What would you do?
If this, that and the other happened in your town, what would you do?
Yeah, I think he must have said it at least 10 to 15 times.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody says, because I train medical students in communication skills,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if somebody says to you, what would you do? That is actually a cry for empathy.
Mm-hmm.
You put yourself in my shoes, please.
Yes, yeah.
And imagine what it would be like if you experienced this.
Mm.
And he said it 10 to 15 times. And as far as I know, nobody answered that question. Answered that. So I put myself into his shoes and I thought about it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to post this on Facebook and I'm going to ask other people what they think. And I was absolutely surprised in many ways about the reactions that I got.
Yes, yeah.
Which were not from a vast amount of people. I'm not saying like hundreds of people suddenly responded, but the type of people that responded were people who I consider to be, you know, artistic, caring, interested in politics, in high positions
Right.
of authority, who have maybe written a book, who have published, who have done quite a lot in the world, who operate in social circles to improve society,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
in arts institutions. And they were all telling me basically, the words were, don't cross this line, Josephine. This needs to be silenced. You are not brave, this is dumb. He's a fascist hooligan. He's been called names, Tommy Rot. They've been extremely rude, not only about him, but also really towards me, implying, we are so sad for you, Josephine.
Yes, yeah.
We are concerned. You are going down the right wing, right extremist, slippery slope, and all of that. And of course, I don't ever. I like to hear other people's opinions. I really do. So I've actually really encouraged these people to come forward even more and say, "Well, tell me what you mean."
Right.
You know, and what do you think of this? So I posted something from Douglas Murray.
Yes.
And you put me on to it. Oh no, it was somebody else put me on to.
Majid Nawaz?
Yes, and you said, yes, this guy. And so I've been posting these things as well, just to see, because they are, as far as I'm concerned, speaking fantastically intelligent
Yes.
stories about what's going on,
Yeah.
and have very, very intelligent points of view about what's going on.
Very balanced.
Very balanced. They're not football hooligans, you know, very balanced. They're well educated. They're, in one case, as Wazad, Mr. Wazad was...
Majid Nawaz.
Nawaz. He's a Muslim himself.
Yes.
And he was speaking for the British Empire, about being British and what are the true values of being British. And even they were described as, no, Josephine, why do you keep posting this fascist stuff?
Yes, yeah.
I'm still reeling from it a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
I'm very, very interested to know what's going on, actually.
I think the thing that strikes me the most about those accusations, both towards the people that we're both interested in and towards us as individuals, the accusation is don't go down that slippery path to becoming a fascist.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying in response is, no, I have absolutely no intention of going down that road.
Yeah.
But we need to have this conversation so that we don't create the gap that in reality has already been created
Yeah.
for the very right wing and for fascism to come in.
Yeah.
So let's fill that gap with an honest discussion about what's going on and what we need to do about it, rather than staying silent for another 10, 15, 20 years and see the situation get a hell of a lot worse than it is now.
Absolutely.
So it's a real call for anti-Nazism rather than...
Yeah, and what is Nazism? You know, I mean, it was a socialist movement,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which is interesting.
It is, isn't it? But uncomfortable, that.
Yeah,
Mm.
bit uncomfortable. Yeah, I think Jordan Peterson, if people watching this have not yet read Jordan Peterson's book, he talks a lot about this, 12 Rules for Life. Fabulous. I bought it for my son to read as well. I think if one would like to suggest that he's just a which was said on one of the posts,
Right.
he is just a patriarchal hegemon. I had to look that word up. It means patriarchal leader.
Mm.
So, at the same time as criticising Tommy Robertson for being racist, they're also criticising Jordan Peterson for being racist.
Racist?
Yeah.
Really? Patriarchal, I've heard. Racist.
Patriarchal, but he's on that side as well. He's...
So if he's patriarchal, he must be racist by definition.
Something
sort of thing.
like that. And I'm just getting so confused about this patriarchal thing, because if you are criticising him for being a patriarch, but you want to not have anything bad said about the Muslim religion, aren't Muslims? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but isn't that a religion that is based on a patriarchy?
Yes. Right. Yes.
So I'm going, well. So okay, I did invite the person who said, no, I am not going to read this book. I am not interested in a patriarchal hierarchy. I did invite her to come and meet up with me, because I said Facebook is not necessarily the best way to talk about these things.
Yes.
And she said, no, I'm not going there. I don't want to.
I guess that cues into something else that I'm curious about, and I'm quite disturbed by as well. Like, I've considered myself to be on the left of the spectrum all my life, pretty much very left. And one of the things I took as read, if you like, about that end of the spectrum was that it was open, it was curious, it was hungry for new information to come in.
Empathy of all things,
yes.
For all peoples.
And all opinions.
Yes.
So to have this wall put up of, I'm not even going to look at that, really surprised me. And I find it really worrying that people aren't prepared to look at stuff that they might disagree with, even if it's just to come to a more informed reason as to why they disagree with it.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Yeah. I had my attention drawn to this, what would you call this, paradox, this left tendency to go to an extreme that I don't recognise.
Right.
Also by friends I have in Germany, and one in particular, and he's been writing about this for quite a while, and I've been fascinated. It does make a lot of sense to me. But
what, the paradox in the left?
Yeah.
About being open but then being very closed?
Absolutely,
right.
Yeah. This sort of, I think if ever you say to, what I understood it, Stanley, is that tyranny only starts if you start silencing people.
Yes, yes.
You no longer have a democracy if there's not freedom of speech. And what we're having on the left side is people who actually literally are saying to me, don't cross that line.
Yeah.
This needs to be silenced. So that is tyrannical.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, really, is this really happening? And then you get, this video that my half son on the father's side in Germany posted. He sent a video of what's happening in Chemnitz, which is a great big sort of protests. And these are people.
Tell us a little bit about those protests, because they're quite unusual, aren't they? They're quite.
It's a new
protest.
Phenomenon, because it's not just right-wing people coming out with Nazi flags. It was a peaceful protest, which was joined by hundreds, thousands of people who are saying, we are not right-wing. We have just had enough. Alternative für Deutschland is alternative for Germany, which is AFD, G.
Right.
AFG is the party that came out, and that is like the UKIP.
Right.
And there's been, it's very split in Germany. You get a lot of people saying, no, they're just like UKIP, they're right wing, we don't want that. But more and more people are joining that party because it's only under their umbrella that they get to express their dissatisfaction for what's actually going on.
I didn't realise it was a political party that called that march. I thought it was a spontaneous gathering of people who, didn't they all march in silence or something?
Yes, they did. But if you look at the video footage, and there was a news report, which, because I understand German, I looked at the news report as well, where they were actually zooming the camera in on various political leaders and people who had also come from the right.
Right.
Yeah. And saying this was not just a people's march.
Right.
This was a mixture. But what I've understood it was the AFGD, Alternative für Deutschland, but hundreds of people joining in, because it's only, as I say, under that umbrella that they get to express their frustration about the gang rapes, the harassment on the street. You can see them talking, this one guy is desperately upset. And he said, I was just going out with my wife, and then this guy came up and said, oh, you want ficky. This is in just tiny ways, but also really bad ways. It's happening everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Even I have friends and also people who stay with me, because I run Airbnb, people who come over from Germany, a lovely gay lesbian couple, and they were saying in their hometown they don't dare tell anybody they're gay anymore.
Good grief.
They do have Muslim friends, but they wouldn't want to tell their Muslim friends, and we are saying friends, just ordinary friends, not extremists. They wouldn't want to tell their Muslim friends that they are gay, because then they wouldn't be friends anymore.
Blimey.
Yes, so...
And where's this?
This is... I can't remember the exact town they mentioned. It's not a town that I'm familiar with.
But in Germany?
But in Germany, West Germany.
Right.
Yeah, so not in Berlin. So it's everywhere, and it's growing. There's dissatisfaction, and
I guess it brings to mind for me another disjunct that there is between on the one hand, an absolute insistence that we accept Muslim culture as it is, rather than trying to impose anything on it. And also, there's been so many gains made by the LGBTQ plus community over the last 20 years. And it's obvious that those two are going to clash at some point, and maybe some of the gains will be lost. And I'm curious about at what point it will be like, oh my God, this actually doesn't work. And I would rather that discussion happen before the event, rather than after.
Absolutely. I do think it's an integration problem.
Yes.
This is not a racist problem. As far as I'm concerned, people can practice and believe whatever they want. As long as it's within a community where everybody is supporting that, and And it appears that a lot of the Muslim women are totally supporting this patriarchal hierarchy, you know, for spiritual reasons. And that's fine. That's great.
If that's the case.
If that's the case, that's fine.
Mm.
Yeah, we do know there are places where they're fighting desperately for the opposite.
Yes.
Yeah, we do know that. But those are apparently sort of more minority cases. We're talking about the general Muslim belief, the peace-loving Muslims, where the women do respect the religion and abide by those rules to a degree, and they are content to do that. That's fine. Yeah. That's fine. So what was I saying?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Got lost there.
Yeah.
We were talking about the LGBTQ.
Yeah. Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. But of course, coming back to these two gay lesbian girls saying they can't tell these lovely peace-loving Muslims who are friends of theirs that they're gay because then they would not be friends anymore.
Right.
And this is very interesting.
Yeah, it's a reversal of the process that's happened over the last 20 years.
So we were talking about integration. It's an integration problem. So we've got a religion here that is very, very difficult to integrate into our society. I believe when the Huguenots from France came over, it was much easier to integrate them into the British society.
Yeah.
But is the Muslim religion, how can we integrate that?
Yeah. It really is an experiment, isn't it? And we don't know the answer. And one thing that occurs to me is that Christianity, for all its current day faults, went through a massively radical process of moving away from being very literal to embodying the spirit of Christianity, if you like, which softened it. And that took some time, it was quite a while ago. And there's the possibility for the Muslim faith to do that as well. But going by the experience of Christianity, it's going to take some time.
It is, yeah.
And it's going to soften slowly.
And it's going to be messy in
Yes.
places, which it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course there is also the question, is it possible with the Muslim faith? Because the life of Muhammad was so different from the life of Jesus.
Absolutely, he is a warlord.
And the other is the Prince of Peace.
Yes. So, and of course their politics are totally united with the faith.
There isn't a separation of church and state.
It's separated, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very, very complicated. I wish I knew a hell of a lot more about it. In fact, I've decided I am going to read the Quran.
Right.
And I'm going to read the Bible. I just need to know for myself.
Yes. What's actually in those books.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how they can be interpreted and applied.
Yeah. So, we have this massive build-up of these rapes going on. And I think one person on Facebook did point out, well, why aren't we talking about Catholicism, the abuse there? Why aren't we talking about rapes all over the world? Why aren't we talking about child trafficking? Why aren't we talking about all of that? And I think I answered, well, that was in response to Tommy Robinson's talk at the Union.
Right.
And I said, well, to be fair, he was talking about Luton.
Yes.
He was talking about the town that he was brought up in. Why would he suddenly talk about the black magic voodoo practices in Africa? You know. It's tricky. It is a tricky one. I think it's a very, very complicated subject.
Yes.
This whole Tommy Robinson thing is because at what point did he decide to take the matter into his own hands? What was his school education like? You know, how long ago did this start? His father, his uncles, his grandfather, they were also fighting in similar ways
Yeah.
for their rights.
Mm-hmm.
So are we to blame him for copying those role models?
Mm-hmm.
And within that whole thing, you've got a failing education system in England, you've got the old poverty problem. Why? I think that's the other really, really interesting thing. And it's happened in Germany as well.
Right.
Why are Muslims being sent to the most poor areas
Yes.
of Britain
Yeah.
when we know, for example, in the east areas of old Berlin,
Mm-hmm.
that's where all the neo-Nazis are.
Right.
So why, even when I was still there, why was the German government creating barracks for the refugees to stay there in temporary housing
Mm-hmm.
in a place where there are extreme neo-Nazis?
Right. Right.
And literally hold them captive because they only had like food tokens.
Right.
So what is this?
Yeah.
You know, who's doing this?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, one could say that the left is opening up this gap for the right to march in and take over.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, the government has planted almost like seeds of hate,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yes.
possibility of hate,
Yeah.
by taking Muslims to areas of poverty where there are football hooligans, where there are neo-Nazis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why didn't they send them all to Totnes? That would have been such fun. You know, and I did post a thing on it, why don't we create a temporary camp on Via Island
Right.
and then see what happens. You know, because there's so many empathic people
Mm-hmm.
in Totnes, and they would surely come up and care for them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it would be far easier to integrate.
Yes.
I mean, that would be a lovely experiment.
It would, yeah, on a very small scale.
Yeah.
Because I guess something I've noticed from videos about Luton, and I've seen in Sheffield and
Yeah.
Manchester and Birmingham and whatnot, is that there's massive Muslim ghettos now. I went to the place in Leeds where I grew up between the ages of like 3, 4, 5, that kind of age.
Yeah.
Went to the streets where I remember, you know, grannies and students and, you know, people, Pakistani families, you know, real mix. And it was all the streets
Yeah.
around there were totally Muslim. And it felt like walking in an alien land,
Yeah.
you know. So, yeah, putting loads and loads and loads of Muslims together in a poor area where, as you say, there's more likely to be right-wing elements,
Yeah.
and in such numbers that this like ghetto is created,
Yeah.
just seems
So the
insanity.
resentment builds up. I mean, the football hooligans are going to be resentful about anything they can lay their hands on,
Mm-hmm.
because it's good fun to get drunken and start a fight. We know that a little bit, and well, yeah. But then you don't put Muslims in those areas. Yeah, it's really, really difficult. And back to that thing that I think it's an integration problem, because
Mm-hmm.
when I was living in Berlin, there is a whole area of Turkish Muslims,
Right.
Neukölln, where I go and stay now as well. I'm going back there in November.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely fine. We didn't have any problems.
Aha.
You know, I mean, you get criminality and you get, you know, people acting up and playing up in all areas of society.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and but you know, Neukölln with its the whole Turkish market and everything was is a predominantly Turkish area,
Mhm.
and you go there knowing that.
Yeah.
That's fine, but you didn't walk through that area terrified.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there was no policing.
So what's been the secrets of integration there? Is it just that they're from Turkey, or
I think they immigrated at a pace that was acceptable. You know, it's
Right.
happened over years.
right?
You know, it's and not too many
Mhm.
at a time.
Mhm.
And it was all within the capabilities of the schooling systems to incorporate that. It was, there's nothing wrong with immigration.
Yeah.
But, you know, for example, the speed with which the wall came down,
Yeah.
that was another example of it's just not possible to manage this.
Tell me about that, because I was there when the wall came down, but I
Wow.
have no experience of what happened
Yeah.
after. So tell me.
Well, so when the wall came down, of course, it was so sudden.
Yeah.
And everybody was just like, wow, freedom, and
Mm.
all these amazing people are going to come over from the east, and let's celebrate and reunite families,
Yeah.
and oh, finally freedom, you know. Within probably a few weeks, it became very, very apparent that they weren't so wanted after all.
The East Germans weren't wanted in West Germany?
Yeah.
Right. For what reason?
Well, because they were fleeing from the east.
Oh, right. So there was a mass migration as
Yeah.
well. Okay.
Yeah. And particularly when the monetary exchange happened.
Mhm.
So it was 6-1. So they suddenly were 6 times richer
Right.
than they were before. So they all came over to the West and bought shopping trolley fulls of TV sets and electrical equipment, you know, and stuff that they didn't have.
Mhm.
And in fact, the shelves were bare.
Right.
They were making car deals with the West, you know, they were buying, because they didn't have these trabbies, these little Russian communist cars
Right.
anymore. So they were buying all the super Western cars,
Mhm.
but didn't know how to make dealings with the car sharks,
Right.
car dealers, and ended up giving out loads of money for cars that were totally dysfunctional. So then what you saw when you were travelling out from West Berlin out towards the west, all the roads going out that way you could see with people fleeing to the west
Right.
in their new cars.
Right.
And then the chassis would just suddenly break. So there were all these abandoned cars.
Great.
Yeah. But I mean, that's just an indication of how quickly it happened.
Yes.
And then all the school classes filled up suddenly.
Right.
There weren't, you know, a reasonable number of children in a class, like 15 or 16. Suddenly it was 20, 30, and suddenly you couldn't get housing anymore. And families, you know, they just dropped suitcases of stuff.
Right.
They just literally dropped everything, abandoned their houses in the east, and moved west.
Whoa.
Because factories closed down, there were also things weren't functioning anymore.
Right.
The police force wasn't functioning anymore, the Eastern police force.
Right.
It all had to be reintegrated.
Blimey.
So you had no policing for a while,
Right.
which was great for artists like me. You
Yeah.
could just go over and, you know, loads of artists were just kicking in doors of abandoned houses and
Right.
setting up, and the electricity and the water was still running, but
Right.
they didn't. There was no one to pay the bills to,
Right.
you know, because everything had closed down.
Mhm.
So, but then you had families coming over and rejoining the Western families, and of course, if you suddenly get, you know, all these relatives coming and living with you,
Yeah.
it's lovely. Oh, I'm so happy to see you, but for how long?
Yeah.
How long are you staying?
Yes.
You know?
And families that you haven't seen for, what, 30 odd years?
Mm. So that's another example of an unthought through mass migration, which is also what some of this is.
Yeah.
Have you seen Stranger in Paradise, the documentary?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. How he goes through 3 different styles of introduction to newly arrived immigrants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, you hear, oh, the borders are open, the West, that's where Hollywood is, Hollywood films, that's where gorgeous women are, that's where you can get a job, you can get a work, you can get training. So it's not just the war refugees coming in, it's boatloads of economic migrants, boatloads of
Yeah.
them. And we saw that. we saw the boats were full of young men of a certain age.
Right. Yeah.
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 And there's nothing wrong with that, except
I
that
totally get it.
Hey, stop, guys.
Yeah.
Hey,
Whoa.
hang on. This system that you want to have a piece of the cake is going to collapse.
Yes.
And you won't get any of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's so very, very difficult.
Yes. Yeah. And again, I guess I come back to this situation where there's a polemic involved where if you're left wing, you're supposed to be, let's have the borders completely open.
Yeah.
And if you're right wing, you're supposed to be let nobody in unless they're legitimate asylum seekers.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, where is this middle ground? Where is there a discussion on the pros and cons? Where's the assessment of how things are going so far?
And
Because
why
things
is-
have really stepped up.
Yeah,
since.
why is the finger pointing at somebody called Tommy Robinson?
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Why aren't we pointing our fingers at the government
Yeah.
and saying, hey guys, you've really fucked up.
Mm.
You've fucked up.
Mm.
Seriously, big time.
Yeah.
You know?
Left and right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Definitely. So, should we take a little break?
Let's do that. Yeah, I think we need it. Probably
Yeah.
our viewers need it as
Be
well.
back in a minute.
Yeah. See you soon.
So, we're back. I just thought I really needed to say that I'm only just becoming really, really interested in politics, and with a brain like a sieve anyway, a really wonderful filtering sieve, I call it. I don't always remember dates, times, names, places, all the things that a really good politician or academic has to have in their brain in order to make points and to come up with facts and things like that. So I'm not terribly good at that. So I'd just like to say, if I have said anything at all, just be aware that I might not have got it quite right in the detail. In particular, the thing about Chemnitz in Germany. I am going to be interviewing my ex-brother-in-law, a guy called Stefan Roloff, who is no doubt going to fill me in on all of those details and much more. And I'm looking forward to that, and then I'll be a lot more informed. But saying that, I'm not stupid either. I do read a lot. I just don't remember factual details, you know, so just warning anybody who's watching, listening, that I apologise if I make any minor mistakes. Yeah.
And on the Chemnitz thing, maybe you can come back at a later date after that experience.
I'd love to. It is my intention to really develop my consciousness in new ways now. I feel like I'm on a new wave of energy, inspiration and personal development right at the moment, and that is going to require a lot of work, a lot of new I've got to learn new skills. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, which actually takes us really to the subject that we decided to discuss, is where do we come from? How did we get to this point of time in sitting here and talking and sharing in this way, with so many points that we are in agreement about,
and yet from very different
backgrounds, yeah.
So maybe let's start there. Let's start
Would you like to
with
start?
me?
Yeah, I've just spoken loud.
Okay, I'll talk a bit about my journey. So I was brought up by working class parents who were moving into the middle class as I was born and brought up. So the experiences I had were of a very middle class family background. Brought up mainly in Ipswich in Suffolk, and my parents were both fully paid up members of the Labour Party, actively involved in CND, So as a kid I was going on CND marches. I became very aware of all the socialist literature and communism, and you know the phrase "from each according to their means, to each according to their needs" was very much the mantra that we lived our lives by. And maybe this is a good place to pop in a really beautiful story about me when I was 17, when I left school, went on the dole, and my dad said to me, so now that you're getting some income, we'd like you to contribute to the household budget. And I said to him, from each according to their means, to each according to their needs. I'm very poor in comparison to you that both have full-time jobs, so I'm not going to pay anything. And he had a little think, which is classic my dad. He didn't just knee-jerk respond. He had a little think, and he said to me, "You're very rich in the resource of time, and we're very poor in the resource of time. So yeah, sure, don't pay any money, but do the washing up and the cooking and the hoovering." And I was like, okay, how much do you want?
Great story.
So yeah, there's, you know, I have a deep respect for that kind of trying to come to cohesion in social groups, in families, from that principle. And yet, when I came across Jordan Peterson, so my Jordan Peterson moment was about 1.5 years ago. Again, I went to him very reluctantly, and the thing that I heard him say that really took me aback and made me question myself was when you hear, oh, communism didn't really work because it hasn't been tried properly. What people really mean by that is if I was instigating communism in a country, it would be done properly. And I thought, oh my God, there is a bit of me that really believes that.
Ooh,
like,
yeah.
Fuck, I better look at a bit of history and Marxism and just check myself out a bit. So that was my watershed moment. You know, from then on, I was hungrily grabbing Jordan Peterson, and that led me down the rabbit hole that we've discussed of everything that's come since.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot very unformed for me, because I still have a very deep ingrained and will never leave concern for homelessness, the gap in inequality, the widening gap of inequality in Western society, and so on and so forth. All the classic left-wing issues are still important to me. But this polemic that I once had, that I was on the left wing, well, I'm doing my right hand, I was on the left wing and anyone on the right wing was wrong, wanted people to suffer, wanted to dominate people and for them to be poor so that they could be rich. You know, I had all that mindset, and now I'm like, I don't know where all that is, and I see people on the left and the right that I consider to have integrity and a desire for our world and our society to be a prosperous and a healthy and a growing one for all members of society. So yeah, that's a little whistle-stop tour of my journey to this place where I'm, let's get away from these polemics on any issue and start to find the meeting places, the meeting points.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, that could be described as a new form of intelligence.
Maybe.
Not trying to prove, as in a debate, I am saying this, you're saying that, and this is
I'm right, you're wrong.
I'm right, you're wrong. But actually, the beauty of saying, yes, and, I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. And so in my mathematics, 1 and 1 is 3.
Ah, nice.
New mathematics. Yeah, interesting. But you also had this sort of, when you came to me to my classes, you wrote this long monologue about sexuality.
God, I don't remember that.
Um,
Or was it the witch's spiel?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And it seems like that sort of took you on a journey through sort of tantric and exploration of male-female energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which is also quite sort of political, but also religious, isn't it? And
Very
spiritual,
much so.
not religious, spiritual.
Yeah.
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 So can you talk a little, just a tiny weenie, because I know you don't do that anymore as such.
Well, I do.
Ah.
I do. I'm initiating a 6-week mentoring course for people to integrate their feminine and masculine.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a part of me that it's been a prominent part of my journey through life ever since the get-go, really.
Yeah.
The first aspect of that I came across was through my anthropological studies at university, where we looked at the possible origins of culture.
Mm.
So starting from prehistory with myth, moving forward to the time where culture initiated, probably about 120, 160,000 years ago, and also from current tribes and tribal societies, that we could then trace back what they were saying, how they were living to that point where culture started. And that gave me a completely fresh insight on how dynamics work between men and women, between the masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
In particular, the extended family, the classificatory kinship, where everyone on your mother's side was considered another mother, and everyone on your father's side was considered another father.
Wow.
Yeah. So diving really deep into that made me question all sorts of things around what is a family structure, what makes it work, what's the glue that holds it together, what are the important components that make the raising of children work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your opinion about like the patriarchal hierarchy, which is our governmental economic system?
God, it's a
and
huge
also
leap, isn't it? From,
religious systems?
Yeah, yeah.
What was your take on that?
At the time or now?
Before?
At the time and now. Whew, okay, big question. My take on it at the time was there was this kind of pristine bubble that we evolved culture in, and it's been fucked up now. There was a mutual honouring of masculine and feminine then, where it was seen as magical that men could go out and hunt and bring back meat that would feed the tribe for weeks. And there was this magical quality about the ability of women to make new life, you know. So there was a very different but equal respect for each other, and then it seemed to me back then, and still a bit now, that the masculine hierarchies that Jordan Peterson talks about has squashed the respect for the feminine. So feminine intuition, feminine ability to create, feminine ability to produce children is all like, well, yeah, that just happens, doesn't it? And it's not of as much value as being out there and driven and active and
involved in politics
and involved in politics
and financial decisions and stuff like that.
Yeah. That there's been a disrespect for the feminine contribution. It's difficult to separate out how I was and how I am now, but you know, I still feel like that. I still feel that the feminine contribution is less valued, but now what I see is that feminism itself has gone down that route as well, and
what down the
bring out your masculine attributes. So now women
and
are,
a lot of women don't want to have babies anymore, do they?
Yes,
for
that it
similar
seems
reasons.
like a lesser choice.
Yeah. And very career driven.
Yeah, which is fine and great, but when it's at to the detriment of everything else, it's like that is so sad. It breaks my heart.
Yeah, and I know that what you teach now is that there is the masculine and the feminine in all beings.
In everyone.
Yeah.
And so our journey through life is to develop our feminine, to look at the shadow, to develop our masculine, to mature it, to look at the shadow, and then be able to weave seamlessly between masculine and feminine as needed.
Yeah, I think that's where I've always been and where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, I think there's room for and we've had matriarchy, we've had patriarchy. Let's have androgyny.
I'm not sure we've had matriarchy actually. I think that's a myth.
Really?
Yeah.
But there are matriarchal societies, cultures, very, very, very small ones, pockets of them.
Yeah, for sure. But it's not like women rule the roost.
No. And what would happen if women did rule the roost?
I don't know, and I don't think we have ever known. As far as I'm aware, it's never happened.
No.
I think there's this disparity between men and women in that men generally are physically stronger, and I think that has prevented a women being physically dominant from ever happening,
Right.
as far as I'm aware.
Right. I'd love to come back to that theme later, because for me, I see women also being very, very complicit in the creation of the patriarchal hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So I come from a completely different setting.
Yes, this is what I want to hear. Yes.
You come from working class going up to middle class. I'm coming from actually some of my great grandfathers were the richest people in England.
Wow.
So there is a tiny bit of blue blood in the family, but very small.
Mm-hmm.
It's more
kind of light blue.
Little spot of it somewhere. But I do remember sitting at tables when I was little and knowing that I put my little finger up and we had all the cutlery in the right places and silver and, I mean, it was upper middle class, I would say.
Right.
Maybe lower upper class or something like that, lower upper class.
Mm-hmm.
And very colonial. So my grandfather on my father's side was a colonel in the army.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of military, naval, and colonialism. My father was born in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. They lived in India. They had servants. I had an Indian nanny, and all of those things.
Right.
I think when I was thrown, it was all fine because I was just like an imaginative child, and we travelled the world. We lived in New Zealand. We travelled across America. We did all of those things that naval families do.
Yeah.
But then I was put into a boarding school when I was 10 years old, which made me very, very, very miserable.
Right.
I was surrounded by girls, all of them picked on me.
Right.
I think because I was a bit of a bright spark when I was little,
Uh-huh.
and I was a bit of a show-off.
Just then?
Well, yeah. But they, probably quite rightly so, wanted to kick the sophistication out of me and put me in my place.
Mm-hmm.
And they certainly did that very effectively. So I ended up after a year being an utterly miserable child. I mean, I had weepy depression. I was crying every night. I was going, I mean, it was really, really bad. And I sort of lost my memory. I couldn't remember things anymore. And I think part of that the impact of that shock, horror, trauma, they were doing things to me at night. Oh God, I mean, the list of it was really bad. And if anybody thinks women are just lovely, they can be mean. They can be so mean. So I did end up having a little bit of a resentment or insecurities around girls. Yeah. And because I was never educated at all about boys, my parents never discussed sex, ever. I think I saw them kissing once.
Right.
Poos and farts were not allowed. Fortunately, my daughter is the queen of burps and farts. She can do it on
On command.
On command, and it's hilarious. So I had this very, very strange, insecure mentality when I was a child, that not at all comfortable around boys and not at all comfortable around girls anymore. But then I started theatre, so I learnt acting. And it turned out that I was quite talented at that, fortunately, and that changed my whole world. So I became somebody who was very, very confident on stage, but not in real life.
Right.
So I spent a lot of my time trying to work out how to be confident in real life. You know, how to be me.
Yes.
Hence, my book is called Discovering the Power of Acting, Discovering the Person Behind the Mask.
Right.
Because, as we discussed earlier, before this all started, yes, we did, didn't we? Acting, real acting, is discovering all the different people inside yourself.
Yes, that was the first thing you ever said to me about acting, and I loved that.
So, I've always been very interested in this shadowy terrain of who people really are. I've studied body language very carefully. That's been my only access to trying to understand people. And, well, if you say that, what are you really thinking?
Right.
You know? And who are you pretending to be? What mask are you wearing? Are you lying? Or are you telling me the truth? You know, so I've been investigating that all my life. And through acting, of course, and getting into Bristol Vic Theatre School, I got the best training.
Right.
And put it to use and started teaching. So when I was teaching acting to other people, I was actually teaching them the things I was learning for myself.
Yes.
Which is about how to be yourself when you act. So all of that, but so my interest hasn't been so political. I've been very interested in people.
Right, okay, but politics hasn't made its appearance yet.
No, and it seemed to me that politics, when I started getting interested and I was supposed to vote either left or right, I would go, well, they're all idiots. Who am I supposed to vote for? They're all lying, you know? And I'm very careful about watching people, you know, their body language as politicians, and I'm going, oh yeah, well they've had training in that, haven't they? So I'm not listening necessarily to what they're saying. I'm watching them lying.
Right, right.
So it's very, very tricky. Yeah. But that's why when I saw Tommy Robinson, I thought, oh, he hasn't had any training in this, and he's not lying.
Right, right.
And he's asking a really important question. What would you do?
So it was the authenticity.
It was the authenticity of the character, of him, that really, I thought, wow. But let's just go back to the story of me growing up. So I left drama school, and then I went straight to Denmark because I married a Dane.
Right.
And because I couldn't act there in, you know, proper venues, because I didn't speak the language, I set about learning the language.
Right.
And started to learn to dance. So again, that fascination for words and another culture. How do they speak? Oh, how do they do that?
Right.
Oh, they think differently than us because they say things in a different way. So all of that. This has been my obsession, really, but also being brought up in the flower power. You know, because I was born in 53.
Right.
Coronation of the Queen.
Right.
The time the sweetie rations were lifted.
Good timing.
After the war. Rock and roll, Rolling Stones, you know, and then hitting Denmark, Copenhagen at a time where feminism was exploding.
Right, yeah.
You know, and coming out of a culture that was very, well, sort of stiff upper lip, you know, and we don't talk about sex and things like that. No.
Yes.
So I hit Denmark, away from the family, learning a new culture, learning to dance, and reading all of these feminist books and seeing the birth of pornography being permitted in the open, but not just sort of sleazy pornography, beautiful pornography,
Right.
sensual pornography and things like that. So I suddenly just got caught up in this whirlwind of what it is to be a woman. Oh my God, and got involved with erotic dancing and all of that, went to Paris. And that's when things changed for me, because I came from the Danish culture is so pro-woman.
Right.
And I felt very powerful. I'd already cut my hair short, blonde hair, and I was fit, and I was like this. Arrived in Paris and was put into a hotel in the red light district there, and did a sort of very soft type of erotic show, Pink Floyd music, with peculiar hats and things on, and very little else. But then I remember walking down the street, happy as Larry and very, very confident, and suddenly this Algerian guy just started shouting at me, and calling me horrible names.
And when was this, roughly?
This was in Paris, we're talking about 1977, 78, yeah. And so I just answered him, I said, "Ja, for fan! Why do you say that to me?" In Danish and everything. And he just grabbed my hair and started hitting me around the face.
Whoa.
And fortunately the storekeeper came out and stopped him. But it was my first taste of, we're in a different culture here.
Right.
The relationship between men and women is completely different here. Whoa, and then I was walking up the street. I hadn't learned my lesson yet. I was walking up the street, and suddenly I felt this hand just come right, I took them and grabbed them by the pussy, Trump, just came right up my skirt and grabbed me. And I just, what? Turned around, and it was this great big black guy, sort of Algerian origin, but big, really big. And he was just sort of grinning at me.
Right.
And I went, yeah, again in Danish, because that was my language at the time. You fucking bastard, how dare you? And then his face dropped. And it's like, you don't talk to me like that.
Right.
And he started walking towards it. I said, look, quick, because I was with somebody else. I said, quick, run. And the hotel room was up. The hotel front door was just up the street. Belted up there, got in, but she was a bit stupid because she looked out again to see whether he was following.
Right.
And she got a fist in the face.
Oh, jeez.
So again, then I thought, and then there was another instance where I was very attracted to a French guy in a bar. So again, it's a different culture. It's not just the black guys, it's the French guys as well, but very different culture. And I was invited for a drink, and he invited me back home, and I was just like, yeah, sure, great, what fun.
Yeah.
And we picked up another guy on the way, and we picked up another guy on the way, and I was still fine. And before I knew it, they'd spiked my drink, and they were all having fun with me, and I was unable to move.
Jeez.
So I think that was my lesson in freedom as a woman. Isn't necessarily, you have to be very, very careful about what culture you're dealing with, and it's not accepted that women can just do whatever they want to do, and be whoever they want to be. And that's when I started wearing military clothes, male military clothes.
Right.
And then I never had any trouble after that anymore. My attitude completely changed.
To what? How would you describe your new attitude?
My rights as a woman, but more in a masculine. It's almost like the masculine entered me, and not with me. So I was much more, which is much more the way I am now. Is don't mess with me. you know, and I will show that from the outset, you know, even though I'm very soft and feminine and stupid and playful as well, but there's a part of me that is, don't mess with me, you know. So boundaries.
Yeah.
Not just,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that these experiences plus everything I learned in Germany as well have informed my political stance as a woman.
So how did you move from that being a personal experience to a political experience?
I think because then I was given the permission to be very creative.
Yeah.
And I designed all my own cabaret numbers, and I became the star of this big venue, and highly respected for my creative ideas, and my voice was respected. Yeah, and I think also in Germany, I think I didn't experience this as I do in England. The conversations between men and women are much more equal. You don't,
Germany.
Yeah, you don't think, oh, I'm a woman talking to a man.
Right.
You're just two people talking. You know, I think you probably see that in my body language. And also when I speak German, it's es ist einfach viel mehr direkt. Meine Stimme ist tiefer. It's like my language is much more direct and my voice is deeper.
Right, okay.
You know, so I became almost like, I was a creator of fashions, and I was also quite a powerful voice in radical creativity. You know, I was edgy. You couldn't predict what I was going to do next.
Really?
You know, and
dangerous.
A bit dangerous.
Maverick.
Yeah. So a maverick, anarchic. You know, but a lot of people wanted to work with me also for that reason. So I just became a very, very powerfully embodied woman. I would say an androgynous figure almost, because the way I dressed and the way I was with men and women. Yeah, so that's been my whole journey. Privately, I've not done so well.
Right.
Because I think privately I was almost too popular and too powerful, and it must have been very, very difficult for the men I was with to not in all cases, but I'm not your typical woman. you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was married 3 times. So, and I had very, very many different relationships with men. But I didn't allow myself to be, you know, as Mick Jagger would say, she's under my thumb. I was never under anybody's thumb. And I think for men that is very, very challenging, not because they didn't love me, but because the way that looked in front of other men.
Right. So they found it, what's the word? Where they felt they lost their masculinity in front of other guys. Yeah. Because what, you were wearing the trousers, literally?
Literally, yeah. And not just because of that, but I'm a very spontaneous person. And I think maybe we're talking about the patriarchal stability is sort of rock solid, you know, it's not spontaneous, you know, so I was very spontaneous, and they thought my spontaneity was maybe too much sometimes. Right. I know, I understand, it's fine. But I didn't have a lot of success with my relationships with men, hence I've not been together with a man for 18 years. Right.
Through choice?
Yeah. 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 So where have I got to the now? Yeah,
I'm interested in the anarchic, creative anarchy into a political anarchy at that time? Or
It didn't. No. like I said, you know, all I saw was politicians were lying, you know, so why should I vote for them?
So a disenchantment with
A
politics.
disenchantment with politics. And the disenchantment with the rich aristocracy.
Right.
You know, I believe you're not rich because you have a lot, you're rich because you don't need much. So I've been practicing my politics in a very physical way and a very material way, in the sense that I've been drawn towards not having anything. I'm very Taoistic, I'm very androgynous. You know, I've had a resistance to rich people.
Right.
Rich men were asking me to marry them, and I said, no way, no way. You know, so probably cutting my own nose off to spite my face, really. But my political engagement has been in much more practical terms as a mother.
Right.
Bringing up 2 children on my own, being the mother and the father, and doing it with very little money. That's been very interesting to me.
What did you learn and experience through that?
That we have reserves that we're not aware of.
As human beings or as women?
As human beings, yeah. We don't really need much.
Right.
You know. And yeah, I've been through 1 or 2 life and death experiences as well, you know, which have also informed my spiritual awareness of the fact that I am more than who I am.
Do you want to talk about that a bit? That sounds like an interesting experience.
Well, I don't. I feel like I'm taking up the whole conversation.
That's okay.
Here.
Yeah, take it up. Yeah.
In Morocco, I nearly died a couple of times. I had very, very dangerous experiences, and I did experience an out-of-body experience.
Wow.
You know, I've experienced that a few times now. So I know that when one is in a very, very dangerous situation, something else kicks in.
Yes.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
And those are the reserves
Okay.
that I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah, we are capable of a lot more than we think we are. Yeah. And I find that very interesting.
Where does that come from? What is it? Yeah. No, I'm not asking you to
no.
answer those questions.
No, but I think therefore I've also become a extremely deeply philosophical and very, very spiritual being as well. And I very rarely talk about those things because in the average daily life people don't.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
But those are the books I read. Those are and not in a sort of new age sort of way, not at all.
In what kind of way?
I'm more interested in somebody like Gurdjieff, who tests the limits of one's ability as a human being.
What does he do?
Well, he's a Russian philosopher who I studied when I was in Paris, actually.
Right.
And he would do like training camps for people, you know, and he would say, at any point of the day, I will ask you to stand completely still.
Right.
And you are not to move until I tell you to move again. And you might be doing something like just walking through a very, very cold river. Or you might, I mean, you can imagine all the different situations.
Yeah.
And the endurance of attention, you know, the focus of attention in that moment to endure the pain.
Right.
And also just know that you can get through this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a great challenge.
Yes.
It's a great challenge. Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's just a small example of some of the stuff he did.
Yeah.
But I was very attracted to the more the New Age philosophy. I was put off from that. The time that I walked into my sister's home and she had a magazine, and on the magazine was a picture of a child with an enormous great gold-covered chocolate coin, and he was taking a bite out of it.
Right.
And then, the title was "You can have anything you want."
Right.
And I thought, I don't want that.
Right.
You know, again, going back to you're not rich because you have a lot. You're rich because you don't need much.
Right.
That fascinates me far more.
Right. Right.
Far more. And I'm still like that. Yeah, and the Moroccan experience of having to survive, make my own candles. There was no water left. Nearly died. Had to get all the water with the donkeys. You know, had to wash my daughter's nappies in seawater because there was no fresh water. Nearly dying because I got ill. And I have to say, there was an Arab guy and a Moroccan guy. They were best friends.
Right.
It was unusual for them, the two different, what you call it, cultures, religions to be friends, but they were best friends, and they saved me twice.
Wow.
They did, in the most beautiful way. They did not take advantage of me at all. They were so compassionate, so kind. They looked after me shitting and pooing everywhere. They looked after my daughter. They did all our washing for us. Wow. They paid for everything. They were beautiful, beautiful people. And they even, because somebody had stolen, they were dealing in hashish, somebody had stolen their block of hashish that they were supposed to be making money with.
Yeah.
Some tourist people.
Right.
They stopped the search for those tourist people.
Really?
In order to look after us.
Good grief.
And then once they finished and put me back, I was like a skeleton, and my little daughter and we were healed, and they took us back to where we had a shelter, and they said, and now we go. We find these people now.
Right.
You know, several days later.
Wow.
I mean, beautiful. I mean, let's talk about, you know,
human compassion.
And they were Muslim. Beautiful. Beautiful. So we're not complaining about that at all.
Not at all.
And not about men, because they're beautiful, beautiful. However, coming back to where I am now, I think my turning point was rather like you with Jordan Peterson.
He's got a lot to answer for, isn't he?
He has, yeah.
Well done, Jordan.
You know, he just suddenly painted the picture of the male hierarchy in a way that I totally respect it, totally understand it, I get it. I don't even mind being in the shadow of it.
Right. Wow.
Because in the moment you accept the differences, you say, that's men, then I can be a woman.
Right.
Doesn't mean to say I have to wear skirts and frilly knickers. You know what I mean?
Though you can if you want to.
I can if I want to, but that's not what feminine is. Feminine has got a much more important job to do.
So what do you see the role as of the feminine now?
I think the feminine can see things that men don't see. And we can work together.
So how do you see that co-creation of masculine and feminine?
I hope it's going to start now. It has to start from an embracing of both.
Yes.
Embracing of our differences. You know? We're not the same at all.
Yeah. I think my critique of feminism thus far is that it's been a case of we as women can be as good at men at being men. Yeah. So I'd love to see a reclaiming of we as women can be as valuable as men.
Absolutely.
At being women. And explore what that means, what that looks like.
And I think that is happening. And I think any feminists, because there's a real anger, a lot of feminists are very angry with Jordan Peterson. They do not want to know. They do not want to even discuss it, you know?
Yeah.
Because it is the patriarch hegemon. And that's a great shame.
Yeah, real shame.
Because I think he is, even though he is coming from a male point of view and describing things as a man, and from a masculine point of view, he's saying things that apply both to women and to men.
Yes.
For example, if we've got this book, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Definitely. Let's get some deportment in here.
As
you
an
know,
actor
and we
teacher.
teach as an actor teacher.
Oh, look, we're sitting up.
Yeah, we are sitting up. But you know, this is one of the things you learn in acting is how to be a powerful being, and that's male and female.
Yes.
You have to stand up. Your spine has to be strong. Yeah, definitely. So that's not just masculine, is it?
No.
Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah. Love yourself, not just your neighbour.
Yeah, people find that very difficult. Hey, perhaps
Yeah.
more difficult than loving their neighbour.
Yeah. Well, then come to my acting classes. And make friends with people who want the best for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's discriminate between people. You know, if you find yourself in the company of someone who is always or putting you down or anything, that's maybe not the best person to be with. Find the people who really can speak to you in a healthy way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
challenge, you know, there's an
challenge
opening
you.
for challenge there without
But
putting
positive,
down. Yes.
positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
It's a big one, isn't it?
It's good.
Yeah.
Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Now, I've got some issues around his whole description of that. You know, there's one or two chapters where I would pick holes in. That's maybe a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
But set your house in perfect order before you criticise the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this.
There's a lot for the young generation to take on board there. Like, yes, for me anyway, yes, I want to hear the input, the fresh perspective that the young generation have. But yeah, do make sure that your room is tidy and your family and stuff is sorted out before you start thinking that you can solve all their problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Yoko Ono said, she said, if look at the state of somebody's room, then you know the state of their mind.
Right.
You know.
So what impression do you get of my mind?
Well, I know you're a very organised person, and you've got a great eye for quality objects.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm very organised as well. Very organised. I like to keep ahead of organisation.
Yes.
Because that frees my mind up to be much more creative.
Yeah, yeah. So that's
And
one of
much
those
more in the
paradoxes, isn't it?
moment, because then you're not thinking, oh, I have to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as my mother
really
said...
been working on that recently, using order and structure as a route to freedom, as a route to creativity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas before I just saw it as a limitation and an irritation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. So that's just a few of his ones. But I would teach my children all of that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it applies to men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So another break?
Yeah, do you fancy a break? Cup of tea or something? Bit of a
That
chill?
would be lovely.
Yeah.
Good.
So we're gonna take 5 and we'll come back and see you for part 3. Great, so welcome back to part 3. I think this is going to be the final part for us. And we were talking in the break about how we wanted to wrap this up, and we want to focus on solutions and see what
Potential solutions.
just what comes to us off the top, and see where we go to with that.
Yeah. Solutions to what?
Well, we started this whole thing with a discussion on Tommy Robinson and the influx of high numbers of Muslim people into this country and how well or badly that integration is happening.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me the other day when I was thinking about it, what's the way forward? That just as women's emancipation happened in the 1950s, 60s, for us with with women's shelters, a safe place for women to go away from abuse and such, that might be a great way forward in order to integrate Muslim culture into this country. If Muslim women who felt
sort of soft integration,
more like a safe place to go, like if Muslim women are experiencing abuse in the family, in their community, then they can go somewhere and receive the protection that I imagine asylum seekers would want to receive from a country like Great Britain when they come here. Like,
there was that example you mentioned, what happened in Denmark?
I think it was Denmark.
Yeah.
It was a woman called Anais Nin, who I can't remember at what stage in her life she received asylum from, I think it was Denmark. And she became vocal about female genital mutilation and forced marriage, both of which she experienced, and was expecting to receive protection from the state for all that.
Yeah, from the Danish state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did to a certain extent, but became, you know, hit person number one on the list of people to eliminate from the
Muslim side.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was the Muslim Brotherhood or who, or whether it was just a general. The call was put out for her death. So she was put in a safe place, but her neighbours complained because obviously they felt that the threat would spread and it would be dangerous for their families as well. So she emigrated to the United States. And I think it's so sad that people we do want to include in our culture, in our society, in the beautiful protections that we have here, that people who like Ayaan Hirsi Ali don't receive that here. So I would like to find solutions for how that can be.
Yeah, I think
offered.
that's really interesting, and my only concern with that is because obviously we are blasted with all sorts of media programs and articles where and documentation of Muslim women saying they're perfectly happy with the state of affairs.
Mm-hmm.
That they are dressing in this way for spiritual purposes. They don't appear to have a problem. How much do you think that is true, or is it true of some and not of others?
I guess we don't know.
We don't know.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
But I'm also, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of the fact that we know thousands of young girls have gone through female genital mutilation in this country.
Yeah.
That it's illegal.
Yeah.
And that no prosecutions have happened.
Yeah.
We also know that women of marriageable age are shipped over back to their countries of origin in order to marry and then brought back again.
Yeah.
Girls that we would consider underage.
Do you think that they're saying that they're happy with the situation? I mean, I watch their body language as well. I mean, the bits of them that I can actually see,
right?
You know,
yeah.
But they look quite convincing to me,
right?
You know, so how? I suppose the ones that are in the greatest of danger, they're hidden away. Where are they?
Well, who knows? I guess the thing for me is that I don't see choice on offer.
Yeah.
And for those who do either choose to leave the faith, so there's an organisation in the UK, the ex-Muslims in the UK,
right,
who meet online and in person incognito. That's not the right word, but anonymously. Yeah. So that they're not attacked. There's also, because there's lots of different Muslim sects, there's also minority Muslim sects that are targeted in this country, so and there's no protection for them either. So, but getting back to the issue of Muslim women, we just don't know what percentage are genuinely happy and what percentage aren't, and also what percentage have been so inculcated into a culture that sees their testimony as is it worth 2/3 that of a man? That a man, her husband, has right to sexual access to her regardless of her wishes or desires. You know, all this kind of stuff, it can become so ingrained that the self-respect for yourself as a woman is lessened.
It's normalised.
It's normalised. And so in a culture where we've made such progressions in that arena, maybe it will bubble up as time goes on.
As time comes on, and that's
we need to be prepared to look after those women when they show up saying help.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think it would be very, very interesting to have a helpline set up, and maybe the Samaritans do actually already have things like that in place.
Yeah, maybe.
But to bring it to more public awareness, that would be very good. But that's, again, we're returning to the problem of, if we make things like that, bring that to public awareness, are we being racist?
I'm sure we'll be accused of it. Well, we know we'll be accused of it.
We know that from experience now. Yeah. But I really, really like that idea. I mean, that's fantastic. Yeah.
And I'm not prepared to let the accusation of racism stop me from fighting for women's rights. Hey, I've been doing it all my life. Why would I stop now?
Yeah. There are certain things you see that are just not right.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't do right or left, do you?
Yeah.
To see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And genital mutilation is
horrific.
It's wrong. Full stop.
Yeah.
You know. So, other solutions. I think my big thing is work on consciousness and shadow. You know, because that's where my work lies. In theatre, you present the shadow on the stage. You know, how are you going to play Lady Macbeth? Yeah, you work with the shadow. You know, and I'm reading another book by Carl Jung at the moment, Modern Man in Search of a Soul. But Jung is very good at talking about the shadow. I mean, this whole concept came from him, really.
Yeah.
And I watched, I think, what was the name of the Zen monk who spoke with...
Oh, God. I can't remember.
No. See, that's... Doesn't matter.
I can't even remember who he spoke with. Was it Rebel Wisdom?
Yeah, Rebel Wisdom.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Check out that clip on YouTube.
It's Rebel Wisdom.
Yes.
Cool. And he talks to a Zen monk. And I think he says, the Zen monk says, that one of the most important things we should be doing right now is understanding the shadow and working with it. And I know you're going to be talking to Jamie Cato next week, who's very, very good on that.
Not next week, that'll be
next
November.
In November.
Yes.
And he's very, very good on that subject. And and for me personally, another wonderful book is Meeting the Shadow. I've forgotten the authors now. There you go, Sif Brain. So if you don't understand the shadow, it's a really tricky thing to understand. But it works on the principle, if you try to silence something in somebody else because you think it shouldn't be said, it shouldn't be permitted, it shouldn't be allowed, you're also silencing it in yourself. But all things exist in all of us. Yes. So you're damaging not only society but yourself. And the awful thing is, it's like if you put a damper on that or forbid it within yourself, it will come out in other ways. It will. And if you forbid it in society, it will not disappear. It will come out in other ways, and that's in part going back to the Tommy Robinson thing. You know, if you put somebody in an isolation cell and tell them they are just racist and forbid them to speak about something, then they're going to be brewing in that isolation cell, and you're opening up a little monster, the possibility for this monster that you're forbidding to grow, and it will grow.
Yeah.
And this is the shadow work that we need to understand. So if you find yourself forbidding something, then check out what you're forbidding in yourself.
Yeah.
I find this very, very useful in acting. This is what we work with.
Mm-hmm. Is there an example that comes to mind of where you, or perhaps people that you've been working with, have really faced that shadow and transformed as a result?
Yeah, probably countless examples. But I don't think any specifics are coming up right now. However, for example, it's a lot to do with, I think you start going into female and masculine as well.
Yeah.
So if a man is forbidding himself to cry, forbidding himself to get emotional, forbidding himself to be afraid of anything, and all of that, then you can see it very clearly in his body language. It's uptight.
Yes.
It becomes rigid.
The distorted masculine.
Absolutely. Oh, I've got a very nice example. I'll tell you that one, but I'll just explain this further. So my job then with a potential actor of that sort that is just being very masculine, I would probably get them to giggle a lot. You know, we might do silly games, get them to go all floppy and do silly things and roll around on the floor, and I mean,
to experience the opposite.
To experience the opposite. And the same with feminine. You know, if a woman is terribly, terribly emotional and terribly, terribly sensitive, and she feels everything in the room, and oh, I'm so sensitive, I feel everything. And gets, that type, we all know that type of person. So for her, I would want to create some boundaries. Get her to understand how to create boundaries, how to be. So we're doing
Give her a task that needs doing no matter what.
And so one woman, I who was a little bit like that, I said, right, in the next improvisation, imagine you're a punk with a spiky outfit on, and it was incredible, the transformation. She really enjoyed that.
Right, yeah.
She really enjoyed playing that, like really, being weaponed and defensive and stuff like that. And the next time she came to the class, she came with black eye makeup. She dyed her hair black.
Wow.
It was pulled back off her face, and she had a slick black dress on. She enjoyed it so much.
So she really dived into that shadow. What's the word? When you can't go there, that forbidden territory, to see what was alive and real in her for that. Yeah,
and similar things happen with men, in that way. There was just one story. Oh yeah, there was a girl in Germany. All the classes were in German at that time, and she couldn't be angry on stage.
Right.
And she was always smiling all the time. And she was laughing. She was quite politically engaged, but she was very positive, always smiling.
Yeah.
But any time that I gave her a scene, or she wanted to do a monologue that involved anger or something, she just couldn't get that emotion to emerge.
Right. Yeah.
It just didn't happen. She was forbidding herself to be angry. And she forbade other people. She found other people, if you get angry, don't do that. Why are you doing that?
A fear response.
Yeah. And then I noticed that she was clenching a lot with the jaw. Somebody is smiling a lot. And she went,
all tight.
I said, relax your jaw. But she just burst into tears.
Oh, beautiful.
Because we did the sense memory exercise.
Right.
Which is like going into sensory feelings, and then
I
just
love
like
it,
that,
how I can see
like
the
that,
emotion coming
like this,
from
and
you.
she just went, I'm not happy all the time.
Right.
And she just burst out. And do you know what we discovered?
What?
She'd been adopted.
Right.
And her adopted parents were so lovely.
Yeah.
she couldn't, she forbade herself to tell them that she was unhappy.
Right.
And so it was ingrained in her body. So that's part of the shadow stuff.
Such immense healing that can come from that.
It is. Just visiting what it is you're not permitting yourself to say, not permitting yourself to do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Beautiful.
It's really, really good. Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what I've been exploring throughout my life is the shadowy sides of society. You know, I've mixed with criminals, I've mixed with drug addicts, I've mixed with street life.
Right.
I speak their language, I understand, and they know that they, you know, it's like, I go, not with me, mate. You know. You know, but we understand each other.
Yeah.
So it's been very good for me because I understand also in those environments there are some absolute angels who speak pearls of wisdom, you know?
Yeah, they're in every walk of society, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think shadow work is terribly important, you know, and you really need to try to understand yourself better and understand other people better. So solution for the future, I see the birth of a centrist party, not neither right nor left, but centre. Centre, where we can learn to live with the paradoxical opposites, because they have to exist together, just as the light and the shadow exist together.
Yeah.
They cannot exist without each other.
Yes.
If you forbid the shadow, you're not doing yourself a favour. Just as the shadow of it forbids the light, is not doing itself a favour. They exist together.
They're interdependent on one another.
Interdependent. Just as men and women are interdependent.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Just as the hierarchy is the top and the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of it. We are interdependent. That's the structure of life.
So this centrist party, what would that look like?
Well, I think it would certainly be politicians who are very keen on not straw manning the other parties, but steel manning the other parties and say, listen, I get what you're saying, and I really, really like that idea. How can we incorporate that?
So that sounds like not a party as we know it, but some sort of organisation in between all the parties, taking in all the information from everyone and saying this is a pro, this is a con, this is something we need to work out, and sort of almost like political parties going to mediation or something. Something like that. I mean, this is some very early stages of this idea. Just off the top.
But it's got something to do with, you know, if you become a politician, the first thing, what I heard once, I might be wrong, but I heard this and it struck me as very important. If you become a politician and you're in a party, the first thing you have to do is find your enemy.
Within the party?
No.
On the opposite?
On the opposite.
Right.
Because otherwise you
Aren't
don't know who you are.
Enemies?
Well, yeah. And it strikes me, well, what is this? You know? How does this work? Maybe this is why I've never been into politics. It just doesn't work for me.
Right.
I think it'd be nice to well, I'm talking so naively.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But something in between the two. Yeah.
The two being left and right?
You've got the Liberals, but they're not centrist, are
No.
they? The Green Party's not either.
No.
So who's the mediating? Who's the mediator between the opposites? I felt like I've been a mediator between opposites all my life, you know. So where's my party?
Yes, the mediator party.
The mediator party, yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
It needs a lot of thinking through.
Yes.
And of course, you know, not being a politician, I'd probably be laughed out of Parliament, wouldn't I?
We shall see. I love the idea that through conversations like this, that little ideas that, it's clearly not an idea that we could just like, bing, there you go, there's the solution, but maybe it will land in someone's ear who is excited by that and wants to formulate it into something more coherent. So Yeah, just that idea that seeds are being
Yeah.
dropped. I like that.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that. Doesn't
Yeah,
need to be
but we
coherent.
haven't found this thing that we're in disagreement about yet.
Yes. Yes, I was saying to Josephine earlier, I would love to find an area of disagreement. When you were talking earlier about
Androgyny?
Androgyny, yes.
Yeah. I did meet a hermaphrodite once, and that was really interesting. He was such a special person. And hermaphrodites are born all the time. There's a very tiny percent of them, but they are born all the time.
Hermaphrodite is the same as intersex, right?
Yeah, it's both sexes in one body.
Yeah.
And it comes in many different forms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it might not even be visible.
Right.
Yeah. But this hermaphrodite, his name was Maximilian Glass.
What a great name.
Yeah, and he organised enormous crystal congresses, you know, like people who collected crystals and knew all about crystals, the way they grow and all their essential elements and powers. He would organise these big crystal conferences, and he was also a classical pianist, but his mother had operated him to a boy.
Right.
Yeah, and he was deeply sad about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see that he was a male that was quite sort of mammalian, you know, had quite a soft body and very little hair and things. But what a beautiful person! And how interesting it might have been if they just left him as he was.
Yes.
And again, it's that thing. Why are we? It has to be this or it has to be that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I speak about androgyny.
Right. Yes.
You know, and I was thinking, oh, we've had matriarchies. You said no, probably not. We've had patriarchy. How about androgyny?
Right.
And then I think you're not in quite agreement.
Yes. No, I have a response to androgyny because it feels to me like a squishing together of masculine and feminine, and that's not my desire. My desire is to bring these two facets out in all their beauty and glory
and differences
and see them weaving together, you know, both inside ourselves. I can't really do that. Oh, there we go. And between each other, so that we're constantly moving between our masculine and feminine attributes.